Hi there, in this video I'm going to show you how I would introduce teaching ratio to my students. So here are my learning objectives for my class. It's describing uneven sharing as ratios, finding equivalent ratios using pictures and sharing a total and a ratio. I'm going to assume that they've got no knowledge of ratio whatsoever, even if some of them do. I wouldn't actually share that to begin with at all with them. I wouldn't even give them the title ratio. What I don't want to do is use any preconceived ideas they might have of what a ratio is. So I'm not going to use the word ratio at all to start the lesson. I might just call my lesson spots. For this lesson, students will need a pen, a pencil, maybe a ruler, maybe not, paper. If ideally you've got mini whiteboards, great, fantastic for mini whiteboards. Or if you want to use physical things, maybe multi-link cubes or buttons or coins, things that they can actually share. Obviously, adapt the lesson up to you how you do it. We're really fortunate in our school. We've got iPads and students can use iPads, which is amazing. Anything where they can play around with their ideas is great for this lesson. So let's get started. I would actually start with 6 spots and a question. My question would be, how many different ways can 6 spots be shared between 2 people? That is literally all it is, and then prompting around the class. I might put a picture on the board, I might show them 6 spots, show that we could move them around, but just let them play with it and see what they come up with. If they find one way of sharing the 6 spots, most of them will go 3 and 3. Prompt them, get them thinking about different ways, how are they going to record the different ways, etc, etc. These are the sorts of questions I would be going into. So having a quick look at this slide, this is the question we've been asked, and I'm saying again, don't impose ratio notation on our students at this stage. These are the answers, just as ratios for us as teachers. So there are 5 different ways of doing it, but not something I'd expect from the students. So it's time now to mini plenary, discuss. Some will have had some success, some will have had lots. It's time for you to bring that knowledge all together for the whole class, however you want to do that. I get students to share as much as I can. So how have our students shown the different ways of sharing? So not just what are the ways, but how have they shown that? And that's really important here. It's getting different ideas across to students. So some will have been really gung-ho and gone straight at it with lots and lots of pictures. Some would have been a bit more reticent and less likely going for these sorts of things. So it's getting across that you can just have a go. So any knowledge is good here. Anything that any other students have done, share it as much as you can. See if anyone's actually used any numbers instead of pictures. If they have, praise, of obviously great, but I want to try and stick to pictures as much as I can at this stage so that students really get that feel of what we're really doing here. Question them. Ask, is 1 to 5 the same as 5 to 1? Please don't refer to it like that, away from ratios at this stage, but ask them, is that the same? What about 2 to 4 and 4 to 2? Are they the same thing? Hopefully they'll come across with no, because if you've got one person getting 2 and the other person getting 4, it's not the same as first person getting 4, second person getting 2. That's getting our order of ratios in there, so it's really important they differentiate between those two. Finally, maybe why isn't 6 to 0 sharing between 2 people? Because all 6 go to one person. It's not sharing. It's just all putting it all in one place. Fantastic. So how are we going to extend this? How are we going to move forwards? Well, we'd say something like this. Let's just stick with 2 for 1. We need to share the spots between 2 people. But for every 2 spots, the first person gets, the second person only gets 1. How will the spots be shared out? Now, obviously, the students will have already done this, but what you can do is, again, see their responses. I'm hoping that they end up with something where they're putting them on one side of the page or one side of the table compared to the other. So something like this. And then, again, getting them to demonstrate that it's 2 for 1. And they might even circle that. They might even circle that to show that that's once, doing it once, and then I've got it again twice, and then circle that again. Not very good circling there. You get the idea. And what we're trying to get now is we're trying to steer students towards 2 boxes or piles there. So some of them from their previous one will have had lots and lots of different weird wacky ways of sharing out and showing the different types of ratio. Now we're just sticking with 2 to 1. We're trying to get them down the route of one side for one person, the other side for the other person. In my case, boxes, it doesn't matter. Either way, you end up with 4 to 2. How are we going to extend this then? Well, because some will get it really quickly. So, well, what if we had more spots? Literally simply say that. What if we had some more spots to share out in that ratio 2 for 1? Might need a bit more prompting. What if we had 8 spots or 9 spots or 10 spots? Some will let them work it out, let them play with it. Some numbers work, some don't. Can they work out the rule, explain why it works, etc. So now we're just really letting them play and see what works, what doesn't. Every student is capable of sharing physical things, but some students might have moved on to numbers at this stage. Hopefully we'll eventually get them all onto numbers. So what we want to do is pick a bigger number, something like 30. Say, can you share 30 things? If you haven't got 30 things, how can you share 30 things in that ratio of 2 to 1? Keep it. Maybe keep that box on the board saying we're getting for every 2, we're getting 1. And then how can we keep a record of our results? It might be worth, this stage, in their books, putting a table in there, first person, second person, total number of spots, until we can share out and see all the different possibilities. I've done that table for you here, so if you wanted to display that at the end, you can pause that and show that one. And this one shows us sharing all the way up to 30 spots between 2 people in the ratio 2 to 1. So again, what are we going to get them to discuss about this? What are we going to get them to see? So the question I would ask is, in what way are the last row and the second row the same? So how is sharing 30 spots the same as sharing 6 spots? We're aiming for them to come up with both are in the same ratio. They probably won't use the word ratio because you haven't introduced that yet. You haven't said ratio yet. But they'll probably say they're both getting 2 for this person, 1 for this person, 2 for this person, 1 for this person. If they don't come up with it with those 2 rows, pick 2 different rows. So I've gone with the last row and the second row, but you could go with the second row and the first row. Really easy to spot when you pick the second row and the first row. It might take a little bit more coaxing out. They might come up with the explanation. I really want them to come up with the explanation, ideally, that for every 2 this person gets 1, and that's the same in every row, and that's the key. Okay, so my final slide here is what I would finish up the lesson with. It's how to write a ratio in maths. So we're bringing it back to some numbers for all the students now. We're going to make sure they've got some cemented knowledge in their heads of what it is they've learned and discovered. Explain what the ratio is. Explain the code. I'll show you the slide first. So this would be the slide I would show at the end, and it would just be this. And I'd say sharing can be written as a ratio, and the ratio in maths is known as 2 to 1. And I'd try and get the link between that and the words here. So, explaining that the colon shows we're sharing into different parts. It's not a decimal point, which a lot of them tend to want to write. It's a colon to show sharing. Explain that when we see the colon, we read it as 2, and get them reading out ratios in future and making sure that they're saying it correctly. Explain that we read 2 to 1 as for every 2 the first person gets, the second person gets 1. And next time I meet a ratio with them, that'd be next lesson, I'd be getting them to say that out in words so that we remember that, and it's a visual clue for them into we've got 2 in one box and 1 in the next box. Explain this doesn't mean we know the total number of spots. It just means we know that for every 2 we get here, we get 1 over here. Okay, that's where I'd finish up the lesson. I'd get something fantastic written in their books, and hopefully they would have enjoyed it. If you needed to extend this further, you could go further with extra parts in the ratios. What if we wanted for every 2 for 1 for another one, or you could go on further with more spots, or what if we wanted to split half spots and things like that. I wouldn't recommend it at this stage when it was just an intro to ratio. I would start to go down the route of, okay, what about extra ratio parts or different types of ratios? I hope you've enjoyed this. This is how I'd intro ratios for my students. I find that it works, and I'll try and put some more videos up soon for you to see how I do other things. I hope it helps someone in their delivery of ratio. Alongside this, there are slides, and they're available on the TES. Just search Mr. T's Maths 2 for 1 ratios. Thanks very much.